My friends love my stories about my dad, because he's such an awesome guy but so stupid sometimes. Here's a recent story. My parents are snowbirds, winters in FL, summers in NJ. My mom typically flies back and forth, but my dad drives with their 2 dogs, a lab and a boxer. My dad refuses to pay full ticket price for them to fly. My mom is constantly yelling at my dad about keeping the dogs on their leashes when he walks them, especially when he's traveling and they are in an unfamiliar place. They get way too excited and will tear off running to investigate. He always yesses her to death, then does whatever the fuck he wants anyways. He's a man, so why she expected anything other than that I have no idea. While he was prepping for a recent trip from FL to NJ, she reminded him not to take the dogs off the leashes when he's walking them at rest stops or whatever, because the lab had been especially bad lately with running off and not responding when we called her to come back. She's a bit wild, but very sweet. He starts getting mad at her, saying, "Why do you always tell me this like I'm stupid, like I don't know how to take care of my dogs?" He eventually leaves after they stop arguing, and we think all is fine. Get a call later that night with an update as to how his drive was going. Here's what happened, because of course my dad knows better than my mom and didn't listen. Dad stops to walk dogs at rest stop. Dad ignores the fact that it had been raining and the grass was puddly and muddy and lets dogs out of car with no leashes, probably while saying something dumb like, "Oh, I know my girls will listen to Daddy and be good and not go in the mud," like he always does. Stupid Dad turns his back to light a smoke and sip his coffee. Dad turns back around and see Boxer behind him, sniffing the grass and moseying along. Does not see Lab anywhere. Dad strolls around for a minute, calling the lab. No response. Starts to get worried. She's a gorgeous example of a yellow lab, and he was worried someone might take her. Dad turns a corner to see Lab on her back in a huge mud puddle, whittling around and wagging her tail furiously. Lab is covered in mud. Dad then tries to extract Lab from puddle. Lab refuses and runs away, thinking he is playing with her. Dad falls in the mud. Lab jumps on Dad. Boxer jumps on Lab because she thinks the lab is hurting my dad. Now everyone is covered in mud. With both dogs' collars finally in hand, Dad drags them to car and realizes he has to get to a hotel to clean them up ASAP. Then realizes he is going to cover the interior of his nice car with mud. My dad loves Mercedes. Only car he will ever drive, he says. No choice, dogs and Dad go in car and dogs immediately flop all over the back seat. Dad gets to hotel. They are skeptical to check him in because he's covered in mud. He explains, clerk laughs, gives him a key. You'd think this was the end, huh? Nope. Dad finally gets in the room. Decides to bathe the lab first. Too bad the lab hates baths and sat in the tub howling the whole time. The boxer now thinks my dad is hurting the lab. She's very protective of her sister, and runs into the bathroom and bites my dad on the ass. Hard, no blood though, she knew not to go that far. Dad is now yelling at both dogs. Both dogs are barking and running around the room. The lab escaped the tub when the boxer bit him. Now Dad is running around the room, with his 2 fake hips, trying to get one of them into the bathroom and shut the door so he can clean up. Now the room is covered in mud too, mind you. Dad gets Lab in bathroom, shuts door. Lab starts howling again because of the awful bath. Dad is trying to calm her. Now Boxer is howling in the bedroom because she thinks my dad abandoned her. She has a bit of separation anxiety. Phone rings. Hotel management. Is everything okay? A few of your neighbors have complained about a lot of noise. Dad apologizes and manages not to get kicked out of hotel, but ends up having to pay for damages to the room. Mud everywhere. I think a lamp got broken during the whole. Everybody freak out and run around the room. Bit. My mom laughed so hard she couldn't breathe and had a panic attack. Then started laughing again when she realized what the fuck she just heard. I have never stopped giving him shit for this. But he did admit that Mom was right and from now on he would listen to her about the dogs only. He says he's right about everything else. The time I had sex with a girl I met at a party who just so happened to be confined to a wheelchair. Okay, so, I went to a party at one of my friend's house. I had been drinking most of the day and showed up with a buzz pretty well tied on already. I showed up, hung around a bit, saying my hellos and shooting the shit for a while before I needed to step out back for a cigarette. I walked out back, lit up, and took a seat at the patio table where others were smoking. One of the people smoking was this girl. She was beautiful, amazingly so. The alcohol had me pretty loose and I struck up a conversation with her, and we hit it off completely. There was obvious chemistry and sexual tension between us. Well, we talked for a while, half hour 45 minutes or so, drinking and having a good time, and I asked her if she wanted to get out of there, maybe take a walk or something? Her mood instantly changed. No, I don't want to take a walk, Dick. And she backed her wheelchair away from the table and went to the other side of the patio area. I was dumbfounded. In my half-drunkenness I hadn't even noticed she was in a wheelchair. I felt like the asshole she probably thought I was. I gave her some time to cool off and went and made my apology. I explained I didn't mean to be an ass. I was drunkish and hadn't even noticed. I liked her, thought we had a connection, and just wanted to spend some time with her in a less populated environment. I meant no offense. She took me at my word and said she was sorry too, and that, yes, she would like to go hang out somewhere else. Said she knew of a little park around the way that was typically pretty secluded. We could go there and hang out. It's somewhere around midnight when we pull up to the park. I get her wheelchair out of my back seat and help her out, and we start a stroll around the track. We come around a bend and she asks, "You see that tree over there? Take me over there." I oblige and she says, "This low limb, prop me up on it." I was, again, dumbfounded, but okay, whatever, I do. And we had sex right there with her propped up on a tree. We finished up and things got awkward, so I offered to take her home. We pull up to her house and as I'm helping her up to the door her dad comes out. He's fucking huge. 6 feet 3 inches at least, over 2 bills of lean muscle, and intimidating. He gives her a look that could kill as she rolls herself past him, stopping me there with him. I'm sure I'm about to get my ass kicked. It would be worth it because it's been awesome so far, but I'm bracing for the whooping. Once she's inside he looks at me, doesn't say anything, and hands me $10. I shit bricks. I just stammered. Huh? Wha? What? He looked at me and just said, "Thanks, kid, most people just leave her propped up on the tree." When I was younger my grandparents lived in Mexico, and we went to visit them every year. Post 9/11, this was never a fun experience, but one year made it very interesting. About a month before the trip I was into magic like any preteen is, thinking it would get him the bitches and all that. So I went to a magic shop and found an amazing invention. A light bulb that lit up when you held a penny or some form of metal to it. It was awesome. The only fault I could find with it was when you shook it a little it sounded like a piece was loose. So I had the great idea of bringing the light bulb with me when I went to visit my grandparents just to show them the young magician I was becoming. So I stuffed it into bunches and bunches of clothes and somehow made it through security. No one really searched our bag. Guess 6 Caucasians didn't really register as a blip on the radar. Nothing important happened during the trip. The fun part begins when we were heading home. In a rush I didn't really pack the light bulb deep down in my bag, so it was super easy to see on the X-ray machines they put your stuff through. So we're running late, and when we finally get to the security line they put our bags through barely looking twice at them until they reach my bag. The guy watching the screen tells us to step out of line and wait for someone to hand search our stuff. We're at this point confused. We were more concerned about bringing fruit and vegetables onto the plane. The authorities were really hammering that down. They dive straight into my bag and pull out a light bulb. My toy light bulb. Security flips the fuck out understandably, and begins questioning my father right there. I try to help him out by yelling out, "Wait, no! It's not a bomb! It's a magical light bulb! It lights up when you put metal near the base!" Fear was etched upon the faces of everyone there. Fear on the security officers for they thought this kid brought a bomb onto the plane. Fear on my family's for they thought this little shit was about to get them a free prostate exam, and on mine cause I thought they were about to break my light bulb. Luckily, One of the security guards recognized my utter stupidity and looked at it really closely and decided to test it out. It lit up. So after another half hour of questioning and threats, "If you ever pull this shit again, we could have you detained permanently," we managed to make our flight just barely. For my 21st birthday, I was working in Toronto for a few months to open a new facility. Even though I could drink just by crossing the border into Canada, my friends wanted to do something for my birthday. My company was pretty cool at the time before the economy hit the shitter, and they had to tighten things up more. So, my company flew my coworkers who were also my friends to Toronto for the week. They helped me do opening training work during the day, and we would party every night the whole week. When it came to my birthday, I told them I wanted to go to as many gay bars in one night as possible. So we headed to Church Street and proceeded to get smashed. I don't remember all the bars, but we were doing all sorts of shots bought by awesome Canadians because they're the nicest people ever. The last bar we went to was a little bit further out than the other bars. There was a sign on the door essentially saying that you agreed to be videotaped by entering the premises. I thought it was just a security/surveillance camera kind of notice. There was a drag queen doing a stand-up routine with about 6 guys standing in their underwear behind her. So there I am, completely hammered with my coworkers, one of whom was my HR manager. Apparently, I was being too loud while the drag queen was doing her stand-up routine and called me up out of the audience on stage to tell me I was being too loud. I explained that I was celebrating my 21st and visiting from the States. She said she had a present for me, and to close my eyes and lift up my arms. I complied, and within 5 seconds the 6 guys standing behind her had stripped me bare-ass naked on stage in front of a huge bar full of people, including my coworkers and HR manager. She said she would give me free drinks if I participated in naked wrestling with the 6 other guys, who were pretty hot, so I agreed. So I naked wrestled in front of a crowd for about 30 minutes, before they dismissed me back to the audience and the professionals proceeded to fuck each other on stage. I put my clothes back on, my friends/coworkers dragged me out to the car. Some thought it was hilarious, others were clearly mortified, but no one really said anything on the way back. I passed out on the ride back to our hotel. The next morning, I was afraid I was going to get fired. No one ever said a word about that night, except my best friend who came out to me as bi. Turns out this bar had a website and sold videos of such events online. So, for a couple years, I was afraid of other people finding out about it. Luckily, it seems the site doesn't exist anymore, so I'm more open about telling the story. I had a lot of crazy times in Toronto, including the one time I passed out on the street during Pride dressed in rainbows and white hot pants. I didn't wake up until the next morning at about 10 a.m. splayed across the steps of a bank as customers and employees were walking around me and my stuff that was strewn about me. Fuck Jack Daniels. 3 friends and I, we will call them Adam, Carl, and Steve, were at Carl's last St. Patrick's Day. We had all gotten there around 7, so that we could all go together to a party near Carl's house. However, Adam had brought some alcohol and we thought that it would be a great idea to pregame and just be late to the party. So we started to play a drinking game, progressively getting shit-faced. As soon as all the alcohol was gone, we headed out for the party. But Steve reminded us that we shouldn't drive drunk, so we started to walk. After stumbling down the road for 30-ish minutes, Adam falls down and passes out in front of some guy's house. Steve, Carl, and I all flip our shit because we think he is dead, so we play rock, paper, scissors to see who has to bury him. Steve and I tied, so we told Carl to go back home, then we tried to bury Adam in this guy's yard by digging with our hands. When we realized that we were making no headway, we decided to take Adam home and bury him in the morning, so we tried to pick him up, but we kept on dropping him. So Steve told me to go get my car and pick him up so we could do it before cops came. So I did, and I went 2 miles an hour because I was scared of missing the turn. When I finally got back to the spot, I found Steve crying over Adam, and I told him to suck it up and help me put Adam in my trunk. As soon as we laid him in there, I saw a woman in a nightgown come out of the house across the street and scream. You better have a damn good explanation for all this. And though she was a ghost, I turned to tell Steve to get in my car, but he was already running off into the night, so I closed my trunk, but then opened it again, because I was scared Adam couldn't breathe. But then I closed it again 'cause I didn't want Adam to fall out, but opened it again for some reason, then yelled fuck the police and jumped in my car and sped off at 5 miles per hour. When I finally got back to Carl's house, he was asleep on the lawn, and Steve was waiting for me, and we unloaded Adam and put him in Carl's basement. Then I threw up on his head and fell asleep on Carl's spare futon. Next morning, Adam was alive, drenched in puke, sweat, a little blood and for some reason dirt. Steve and I were hungover, and Carl needed a new futon.